Well, good morning. It's really an honor for us to be present with y'all this morning to help with kind of making these end-of-life decisions. My name is Brian Delozier. This is Bryson Smith. We're both with Turrentine-Jackson-Morrow Funeral Home. And we've both been at Turrentine-Jackson-Morrow for about 20 years now. Bryson, we are a family-owned funeral home. Bryson is part of the family. He's the fourth generation, part of the fourth generation of the funeral home. And we have grown to 13 locations. Of course, most of you live here, I think, in the area where our Allen McKinney location is our main location. And that's where probably most of you that are here today, if you attend St. Gabriel or St. Michael or St. Jude, any of the surrounding parishes, that's probably the location that most of you would choose. But we do have a number of locations, Frisco, Salina, Gunner, even north of here, Gainesville, Whitesboro, and others, to be honest with you. So we do have not only the 13 locations, but we do have 3 cemeteries. I know, kind of as adding on to just what we talked about as far as availability, as far as cemeteries, we do have 3 cemeteries. Our main cemetery at the Allen McKinney location is Ridgeview Memorial Park. We do have a cemetery in Frisco as well. That's Ridgeview West Memorial Park, and also a cemetery over in Greenville. All the cemeteries offer not only ground burial spaces, but mausoleums, as well as columbariums. And we'll kind of add on to that here a little bit later. So one of the things that, I might mention is, what we do for a living. Nowadays, I think the common thing that you hear is that we're called funeral directors. Even in some states get the really cool term of being called thanatologist. Of course, thanato is the study is death, ology, the study of. So some states, we're called thanatologists. We pretty much here in Texas, we're called funeral directors. But some of the outdated terms that, I might mention, of course, we were called undertakers way back in the day, morticians, and of course now funeral directors. I think really the best term that describes what we do for a living is one of those really old, outdated terms, the undertaker. Our job really as what we do for a living is to undertake, things that really during the time of grief and going through a loss that families really shouldn't have to be doing. There should be things that we should be taking those things on rather than having them do those things. And so that's kind of our main job, whether it be helping with services or providing services to the family that maybe they don't know about. So we're here to help, and that's kind of the main thing. We're a service industry, and that's the main thing that we're here to do. I'll just kind of start by talking today. I think the one thing that we get questioned most when I pick up the phone on a day-to-day basis is, about to have a loss, or when something were to happen, what happens? What's the most common thing? What are the questions that we need to be asking? And kind of the one thing that we refer to in our industry is when we receive what's called the first call, and that could be from the hospital, it could be from hospice, it could be from the family, it could be from a medical examiner, a sheriff's department, a police department. But what that is basically the time that we're receiving the first notification that someone has passed away. And so typically what we're doing is once we receive that call, if it's the family, of course, we're going to go ahead and go into a couple of things. And really initially what we're trying to do is just kind of at least just get an idea of what type of arrangements that the family wants to do. And then just to try to set an appointment time for those families to come in and make those arrangements of the type of services that they want to do. Bryson, do you have anything else as far as that?
Pretty much covered everything that I would say.
Okay.
But that's really what he's saying is that's a lot of times people just don't know who to contact, at the time that occurs. And you can always call us, we'll always direct you to the appropriate people, or, if we're jumping a step, then we'll help you. So our phones are always on 24 hours a day. You can always get a hold of one of our staff or any, funeral provider that you choose. Works the same way, usually at a certain time where our phones go to an answering service after 10 o'clock. But all those messages are directed directly to an on-call funeral director. So we're available 24 hours a day to answer any of those questions. So.
Good. All right, perfect. Next thing that we want to talk about, I know we hit on this with Father just a little bit, are the kind of common methods of disposition. There are others that I haven't listed here, but of course, with the Catholic Church, I think the three common types of disposition are, of course, burial or interment. You hear interment as well, and that's just basically earth burial is kind of that defined. Entombment, very similar, but rather than being earth burial, we are placing the remains in an above ground mausoleum or crypt of some type. That's an approved method of disposition. I think also being approved by the Catholic Church. Of course, here in our area in Texas, burial is probably the most popular. You do get to other areas of the country, southern Louisiana, for instance. Entombment's going to be more popular only because of the geographic, of where they're at. And then also cremation. I know just had some questions about cremation in the last session there, and that is becoming a little bit more of a popular form of disposition. Obviously, the Catholic Church does approve of that now. One of the things that we do as a firm, we actually own and operate the only crematory here in Collin County. It is on site at our location in Allen and McKinney, and I'll get to some other things here in just a moment about cremation, but those are kind of the three most common things. There are others, burial at sea, anatomical gift, but those are kind of the three most common ones that we have. The different types of services that we can kind of do attached to those different types of disposition. Of course, the three most common types of services with burial or entombment are going to be a traditional funeral service. Obviously, a mass is kind of the most popular type of traditional funeral service that we are able to service our families with. We, of course, are able to provide our families with a nice location to do a rosary the night before the Mass that's usually held here at the church. To my knowledge, I don't think that the diocese in Dallas allows an actual Mass to be performed anywhere other than at the church. Is that right, Father? That's the only place the Mass can be performed. It can't be performed technically at our funeral home chapel, but it has to be at the church. We don't really, when it comes to pricing, we don't charge any different doing the service here at the church or at the parish rather than at the funeral home. There's no difference as far as our cost is concerned. We want to be able to service the family. We never want to penalize a family to have the service at a church, rather than at the funeral home. I'm Baptist, don't hold that against me, but if I wanted to have the service at my church, I attend Cottonwood Creek Baptist Church, then we don't want to penalize a family in any way. Graveside service, obviously, usually with a graveside service, we're not having a Mass, so it's really more of a simpler type service. And then we do have something that's becoming a little bit more popular nowadays, not necessarily with our Catholic families, but others, in that we're doing graveside services then with a memorial service at a later time. So what this would be is the family really doesn't want to have the casket present at the church, but maybe the cremains are present there, or we have something as representation there. So there's different things there. Cremation services, obviously, cremation. I've been at Turrentine-Jackson-Morrow for 20 years. Honestly, I grew up in Oklahoma. And in the time that I practiced in the funeral business in Oklahoma, I can probably count on one hand the amount of cremation services that I did. So as I came to Texas and started working at Turrentine-Jackson, that's something that I had to learn was about cremation because it was becoming more popular. Obviously, we live in a metroplex where we have a lot of people from other states, other countries, and I think that's one of the main reasons that cremation did become a little bit more popular. But The cost factor, of course, there are differences in cost from firm to firm, us compared to others. But the one thing that you have to do is you have to know what those provider differences are and to know the right questions to ask if you do choose the route of cremation. Is that right, Bryson? Is there something you'd like to add to any of that?
That's correct. You'll never, we're always here to help, just like any other firm should be here to help and answer your questions and direct you. My granddad always told me the best decision that a family can make is an informed decision, and so you do your homework and find out, we're not for everyone. And neither is a funeral home down the street. We're a fit for, we take care of everyone and we help treat everyone that walks in the door the same. And that's the biggest thing. But one of the things is just knowing the questions to ask, where is my loved one going to be cremated? If you want to go see the cremation, can you do that? Or can you be present? Because you can, at our location. So it's just something, those kind of questions, and who's, just knowing that, they're going to be in our care at all times. That's kind of one thing that we pride ourselves in, is that, all of our staff handle everything from the beginning to the end. So
Good, perfect. Of course, the main reason that we're here today is to kind of talk about pre-arrangements. And, in the funeral industry, of course, families are able to go into the funeral home or talk to one of us or one of the professionals, to set up pre-arrangements. And what does that mean? Does it mean it has to be financial? Not necessarily. What it is it's a person wanting to let their family know what their wishes are. I have given y'all some material today. I gave everyone a folder kind of like this, and there is one really valuable resource, I think, in that folder, and that's this right here, 6 easy steps to create peace of mind. This is probably one of the best resources that our firm has put together for our families. We have it on our website. I wanted everyone that was here today to have a copy of this, because from beginning to end, this is really a great resource to be able to give your family. Not only does it help us, it helps you and it helps your families. Step 1 is just kind of writing down vital statistic information on that. You would really be surprised when we sit down with families to make arrangements for services, and I'm dealing with the person that's the next of kin. Let's say it's a son or a daughter, and I say, hey, where was mom born? And they don't even know where mom was really born. May know the birth date, may know the general area where they grew up, but really don't know exactly where they were born. Or then I ask the next question, what was your dad's father's full name? And just get a blank stare. So just having that resource of writing down all that vital statistic information is great to have. It helps us. Of course, we originate the death certificate with the family, and that information is really part of that. The different steps there, it talks about planning the type of service you want to do, where you want to do the service. And then there's also some financial and insurance type questions in there as well. But that's a great resource to have. Of course, in pre-arrangement, the main thing that we're trying to do as we sit down with the family is to help the family decide the type of service that they want to do, whether it be burial or it be cremation. There are a lot of different options. The number of the paperwork that we give out when we sit down and meet with the family, let's say our price list, it's about 34 pages long now. We have tried to think of every type of service that we've done for families through the years and try to help families, and we sit and listen as they're making these arrangements to know the exact type of service that they want to do. Burial cremation, of course, is the main part of that. And then cemetery property type. As I mentioned, you can choose earth burial, you can choose entombment, you can choose cremation, but still have those cremains placed in a columbarium or in a normal grave space. I think the one question I get asked a lot when it comes to cemetery burial, as far as cremation, is, does your cemetery allow both me and my husband's cremains to be placed in the same space together? And absolutely we do. That is one thing that we do allow. It's called a second right of interment. When you purchase a cemetery space, typically you're buying one right of interment, but you can always add the right for another person to be on that space. So that is a very common question. I think a lot of it has to do with, of course, we want to be able to be mindful of the earth and being able to save space. If we don't need two full spaces and we can put cremains on two spaces together, we can certainly do that. Also, when it comes to the services, what type of visitation, rosary options. We do offer reception availability as well. Other things, as we're doing pre-arrangements, we're picking different things. We're picking prayer cards. We're picking flowers that you want to have. The main purpose of pre-arrangement is to make as many decisions as you can to basically take that burden off your family at the very end. So anything that we can do that you have in mind, whether it be, hey, we want to have a bagpiper out at the cemetery, or we want to have, we want to have a video, or, I've even had it where with personalization, that's becoming very, very prevalent in our industry now. And I've had a couple of families say, well, hey, Dad loved riding Harley Davidsons. Is there any way that we can bring his Harley Davidson and put it in there by the visitation? Absolutely. Let's bring it in there. Let's put it right next to the casket, because that's what Dad loved to do in life. So that's what we want to be able to celebrate his life with. Of course, other things that we're going to select and be able to make those decisions on are going to be the type of casket, the type of vault. What is a vault? Of course, most cemeteries now require what's called, a little bit more of a general term, an outer burial container. An outer burial container is a minimum requirement at a lot of cemeteries, only because it helps our cemeteries to be nice, and when families come back to visit the grave, to be nice, and that supports the weight of the earth. But what the vault does is it gives the casket a dry final resting place. And so when we place that casket in a vault and then everything goes in the ground together, that casket's protected, and it also supports that weight of the earth on top of the casket. Of course, when it comes to cremation, we're going to pick out an urn. I know as it was talked about here just a little bit ago, most of the times with most of our Catholic families, we're picking out one urn, and those cremains go in the same urn together. That's the majority of the time. Making arrangements for transportation for burial if it's outside of this area. As I mentioned, I'm from Oklahoma, and one of the things, I don't know if anybody else in here may be from Oklahoma, but there's people probably in here from other states. You grew up in another state, and you may have cemetery property in that other state. Can we help with transferring the remains back to that state? Absolutely. I still hold my license in Oklahoma and still make several trips throughout the year back up to Oklahoma to be able to help our families where we don't have to get another funeral home involved. So cost-wise, that helps the family, and that's what we're there to do. Before I talk, Bryson, do you have anything else before I talk about the next section there? Okay, perfect. The next section, of course, when someone does want to come in and fund their pre-arrangements, in other words, one of there are a couple benefits, and I probably mixed up the slides but two of the main benefits of pre-arrangement is, number one, it's psychological type benefits of, you're making a lot of the decisions. So when your family has to deal with a loss has occurred, and hey, mom had a pre-arrangement, so they're taking all the, that person's going through the grief process. So at that time, as many decisions that can be made ahead of time, that's helping that family where they don't have to make those decisions at that time. The other thing is the financial, benefit of doing pre-arrangements. We are able to, if someone wants to come in and lock in the current price of their service and begin to pay or pay in full for that pre-arrangement, we do allow that. The way that we do that is by when Mr. Jones comes in and he says, hey, Brian, I want to do my pre-arrangements, and we pick out everything, and Mr. Jones writes a check to me, I can't put that money right away into the general revenue fund of the funeral home. That money technically is not ours. until that person passes away. So what we have to do is we have to put that money to the side in one of two types of accounts, and you can see that there on the screen. We can either use an insurance-funded type of an account or a trust-funded type of an account. Of course, insurance-funded, it is kind of, the person does have to be insurable, in good enough health that if we had to do some type of a health screening, that person would pass that health screening to be able to write it as an insurance-funded prearrangement. So if they're not, the other form that we have to do is a trust-funded prearrangement. I could take all day to tell you the history of why we do the two types, but really the main reason is back in the late 1980s, the Internal Revenue Service got involved in our business with the pre-funding of funerals. And at the time, 99% of the funerals that we did were trust-funded prearrangements back then. And it was just the easiest way really to do it. And the reason that we have two now is the IRS said, okay, we're taking Mr. Jones's money in, we're setting it aside, that money's earning interest, which it is, but by Mr. Jones coming in and picking out his casket and his vault and the type of service, he doesn't have to pay the price difference 30 years down the road. But that's why we keep that interest technically. But what they made us do back then is we have to send a 1099 out at the end of each year to show the amount of interest that's earned on that trust-funded prearrangement. The insurance-funded, on the other hand, there is no tax liability to it. It's basically we're writing an insurance policy for that person, and it's dollar for dollar, and we're able to do it that way and not have the tax liability with the trust-funded. So there are two types. So I've mentioned the financial and psychological benefits. They're obviously, I did mention, with prearrangements as well. A lot of people want to come in, they don't want to pre-fund it, and that's perfectly fine. We do offer to just have a nice information file where we can keep on hand, and we make a copy where that person can keep on hand for their family to be able to, over time, have their family know exactly what their wishes are. I might mention one thing with the wishes and the benefits of doing prearrangements. A lot of families will come in and say, maybe I don't have the best relationship with my son or daughter, so the reason I'm here is I want to make these arrangements where my family knows exactly what we want, what I want to do. At the time I pass away, are you going to honor my wishes? By law here in Texas, if someone comes in and they have a fully paid funeral plan through our firm, we cannot go any other direction. If their family comes in and they says, we want to cremate Dad, but Dad has a prearrangement for a burial, we can't change. It's against the law for us to change that type of disposition if that person has come in and that is their wishes. Bryson, do you have anything else to add on to that? Okay. We're going to stick around later today as well, but does anybody have any questions? Or
we actually don't have time for questions,
all right.
but we do have time to bring up Audrey Hare, who's with St. Gabriel's, and she put together this planning a Catholic funeral, and it's on the side table, so I encourage everybody to come and get that. But I did want you to, if you don't know Audrey, for her to say a few words.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for being here. My name is Audrey Hare, and I'm Director of the Office of Worship. And you will see back on that table, right? Over here is a document called Funeral Planning at St. Gabriel. And in that document, among other things, we offer the scripture readings that the church presents to us to plan funerals. And if you'd like to pre-plan your funeral, which is a really good idea, I would be happy to walk you through the process. My contact information is on the front of that document.